fact decreasing its productivity. In an analysis of fisheries in 132 countries, it's estimated that two-thirds of the most vulnerable countries were in Africa. Among these countries, the most vulnerable were Angola, Democratic Republic of Congo, Mauritania, and Senegal. And this is the World Bank classification of countries according to their economic, and they classified African countries as low-income and lower middle-income countries. This is a growing global international network in global ocean acidification network. This is the contributing country during 2012 and 2013. And one can easily note that there is no contribution of any African countries other than South Africa. But happily, as September 2016, there is a growing community countries joining this community, and African countries were the most contributing during this period. Take-home message: climate change and ocean acidification are global issues with a very local impact. African nations are amongst the most vulnerable countries. Great need for more data and information on climate change and ocean acidification and its impact on coastal and inland water. Great need for collaboration and cooperation strategies of all African countries, and nations need to increase mitigation and adaptation strategies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We already have been exposed to so much of useful information that comes from science. But we need to think about the future and need to think how we will move forward with this. And for that, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. Ocean observations are very important. And in front of us we have Libby Jewett, who is the founding director of this NOAA Ocean Acidification Program, and also founding co-chair of Global Ocean Acidification Network, a marine biologist with additional experience in organizational matters. So Libby has been instrumental in setting up already a lot of work in different places, and already we saw something for Africa. This is the subject of your talk.
Yeah. So, I need a clicker. So you sort of stole my initial line, which is to say I'm going to talk about the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, which is based on this concept that what we don't measure we can't manage, and that it's important that we have access to observing data from around the world in order to mitigate and or adapt to ocean acidification. And then I want to talk specifically about some exciting new developments which Naira just spoke about in terms of developing capacity in African countries. And so I'm going to make a shameless plug for an event in the U.S. Center that I'm leading at 4 p.m. today, in which a number of colleagues, all of whom are here in the audience right now, are going to talk from Egypt, Namibia, Morocco, and South Africa about some important developments and specifically what's at stake for their countries and what new observing they're going to be involved in. So in terms of the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, which was founded in 2012, these are the basic goals that we are setting out to meet, which is providing access to information about the changing chemistry or the global OA conditions, an understanding of the ecosystem response, and so we're in the process of developing ways of measuring biological change that's happening in response to the chemical change, and then making sure that that information is used in models so that we can forecast out change. And that's the important part in terms of adaptation. We do have a website, www.goon.org, which I hope you'll take a moment to look at, because we're providing more and more information there. And especially we have this interactive map, and this is where eventually, once we build it out, you will be able to actually portal in and get access to data. This is a view of that data portal. You'll see that we still are deficient in observing platforms around Africa, although it's actually more expanded than it was even a few years ago. And this, you'll see, so this is highlighting actually a specific mooring in the Pacific Ocean. And eventually, we hope that these different observing platforms will actually, as in the case of this one, provide a snapshot, view of how that data is unfolding over time. And again, as Naira pointed out, so this was as of 2013, we had 150 scientists from 31 countries participating in the network, and as of because of some really important building of capacity, we've been able to expand the number of scientists who are now involved from Africa. So we had a workshop in South Africa. A number of people in the audience actually participated in that. And that was actually overseen by the International Coordination Center. And we had another one in Mozambique not too long after that. We had our big global OA Observing Network meeting in May of this year. We launched peer-to-peer, which is a sort of connecting people who have been doing this observing with people who are new to the field, one-on-one. And then we actually even had another workshop in Mauritius in 2016. And as you can see, so this is actually how international the group was at our last network meeting. It was fantastic. We had scientists from 45 different countries who actually came to Hobart, Australia, which is really far away from everywhere. And we launched this peer-to-peer, so these are some examples of the pairs of people who are now interacting and sharing information. And because of that, as we said, so this was at the actual Hobart meeting, we had people from 240 countries, and now, as Naira showed, we have many, many more scientists, especially from Africa, who are participating in the network. And then, very excitingly, because the network is becoming so big, we're actually beginning to develop regional networks of scientists who are interacting on a regular basis to share information in a particular region. And two of our co-leads of the OA Africa Network are sitting right here, Warren and Chibo. And the stars represent the countries from which the scientists who are participating in that network now, I'm sure it's going to expand, it may have even expanded since we created this map, are participating. And we have coming online very rapidly the expansion of new technologies, low cost technologies for use in countries that need them to actually do OA observing, and this is happening rapidly as we speak, not only in the US but internationally, and so we hope to make those technologies available, especially in Africa, but also in other countries. And so I think that's it, probably right out of time.
Thank you very much. I hope you understand the logic of this event, because we started with presenting to you the importance of the ocean for climate system. Then what is happening in the ocean? This focus on one process, which is ocean acidification. Then how we can measure this, how this may affect fisheries, how it may affect life supporting function of the ocean. So we understand it better, we can observe it better. Now what to do about this? And sometimes, of course, we have to act on a totally different level. We have to think globally but act locally. And Jay Manning, who is in front of you, is going to present to you a different vision of how we can address issues from collaboration perspective, not on the international level, but on the level of states in the United States and Canada. This is a totally new setup. And he is a huge power, a marine biologist, also an attorney. So we are pretty protected with that approach. So Jay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vladimir, and thank you, Carol, and thank all of you for coming. It's great to see you here. I do want to say that it is a privilege to follow Libby Jewett on this podium. She is one of the most important people in the United States on this topic, and without her, we would not be nearly where we are, Libby. So how can I stand up here and not mention the presidential election? I will wait till the end. And I want to say I love you scientists. I bet many of you are scientists in the room. I'm a scientist too. I'm a political scientist, and what we do, or what we try to do, is take the work that you do and turn it into something, a law, a policy, an action, an investment by government or by non-governmental players, so that we actually do something about the problem that you have so ably identified. My start on this topic I'm from the state of Washington, in the northwest corner of the United States, where we have upwelling, like many countries represented in this room do. And in 2007, 2008, the two largest Pacific oyster hatcheries in the world had 100% mortality events 2 years running. Thought they had a virus, thought they had some sort of toxic chemical. Turns out it was the first, at least in our part of the world, the first direct impact of small changes in pH. That turns out Pacific oysters are like the canary in the coal mine. They are extremely sensitive at the stage where they are setting. They go from free floating to setting. That is a stage where even a small change in acidity will kill them. And this is a huge supplier of oysters to all of the producers up and down the West Coast, but especially in Washington and Oregon. And it turned into not just an environmental problem, but an economic and jobs problem, which turned out to make a very big difference. So Governor Gregoire, who I worked for, created the Blue Ribbon Panel on Ocean Acidification. And really, it was 9 excellent scientists with a bunch of policy people. The scientists educated the policy people about what the problem is and why it's an immediate problem and something needed to be done. And I chaired the group with Bill Ruffleshouse, which was an honor, and we got a group of relatively moderate to conservative policy people to recommend things like we have to reduce emissions globally. This was a group that would never agree on anything on climate change, but because it was about ocean acidification, it was about jobs, it was about economic issues, we got this panel to agree to recommendations that frankly surprised the heck out of me. So let's take the next step. California, Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia have been working together as the Pacific Coast Collaborative since 2007 on oceans and climate issues, trying to show that this region, which combined is the 5th biggest economy in the world, can lead the transition to renewable energy away from fossils, reduce emissions, and be economically successful, which they have very well demonstrated at this point. I want to talk about this bottom bullet here. The most recent initiative from the Pacific Coast Collaborative is the creation of this international alliance to combat ocean acidification. What is it? It's a collaborative. We're hoping to recruit countries, provinces, states, cities, tribes, First Nations to join together to try to advance the science, which really we're going to be cheerleaders on that. What we really want to do is engage the political machinery and bring additional resources to your work and create the political will to actually reduce emissions globally and regionally, to take actions to mitigate other causes of acidification, to adapt to unavoidable change, and to build resilience. We announced the creation of the alliance at the Our Oceans Conference in September, so it's brand new. Chile and France immediately joined. They were our first 2 countries to join us. I'm here to invite you and whoever you represent to join us, because we have 2 kinds of members. Jurisdictional members, which are countries, states, provinces, cities, tribes, First Nations. Then we have affiliate members, which are academic institutions, businesses, other NGOs who could join and support this effort. And what are we trying to get accomplished? Advance the science, really support you and bring more resources to your work, take meaningful action to reduce causes, protect not only the environment but coastal communities and economies that rely on the oceans, expand public awareness of the issue, and build sustained effort globally to take on this issue. As I mentioned, 2 kinds of membership, jurisdictional and affiliate. I have material out on the table, out in front here. I have business cards. Really seriously invite you to talk to me, to look at our website, to join the Alliance. I think together on this issue, we can make a real difference. Here's our work plan. I'm not going to go through it all. It's really one of our outcomes is to work with people in this room and others to make sure that coming out of COP23, because we're too late to have much of an impact here at COP22, that we get really strong ocean protection language into the International Climate Agreement, that we bring more resources to your work, we elevate this issue within all of our members' jurisdictions, and we more effectively engage on this issue. There's our website. And what does the election mean? Has it nullified everything I've talked about? Absolutely not. This is sponsored by the states of California, Oregon, and Washington, and British Columbia. We had a different election in those states. We elected people who believe in protecting the environment, who believe in climate change. This effort will move on. And if we have to fight the federal administration of the US in doing that, we will do that. Hopefully that won't be necessary. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much. You know, so this was a presentation on how society can organize itself on combating ocean acidification. So, but in order to do it practically, we can actually find solutions that Mother Nature will offer to us. And indeed, the ocean can organize itself around mangrove systems. There are so many processes in the ocean that can help fight oceanification using natural capacities of the ocean. So, International Union for Conservation of Nature, and Dorothy here is a key person, a key manager in this, is trying to organize the community to understand what can be done and help the ocean to do this. So, Dorothy, the floor is yours, and you're going to present that part of the solution in this space.
Great, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you everyone here and for inviting IUCN on the floor. And indeed, I want to give it a bit of a positive spin. I mean, we heard about the impact, and there is no doubt we cannot get around reducing greenhouse gas emission drastically. We know that, but what IUCN, myself, and also a lot of colleagues here in the room are working on is trying, what can nature play in those solutions, and how can it really help us move along. And I think it's a piece of the puzzle is the contribution of coastal and marine ecosystems, climate change mitigation, and adaptation. But we also know, sort of taking a step back, that if we lose these systems, specifically the coastal ecosystems of seagrasses, salt marshes, and mangroves, that they contribute to carbon emissions and sort of are part of that story. So it doesn't matter which type of human interaction, whether it's for rice cultivation or some sort of upstream disruption or coastal development, if we keep going with the ecosystem loss that we see at the moment, it will continue to have an impact of greenhouse gas emission. However, the positive side of the story is that if we conserve and restore those systems, we can have, on one side, avoid new emissions, but we can also contribute to carbon storage and sequestration, which some of you might be familiar with, has been coined under the term blue carbon. And within that system for the coastal ecosystems, we have here, through the UN system and the Climate Convention, we have mechanisms that we can use, be it REDD+, NAMARS, the National Determined Contribution, and so forth, that we can use to incentivize the conservation and restoration. If you want to know more about some of these efforts, I'm more than happy to go into those details afterwards. And as part of IUCN, with many of our co-organizers here in the room, also with Conservation International and UNESCO IOC, we have been starting the International Blue Carbon Initiative, working specifically on some of the scientific questions around the carbon role of these coastal ecosystems, but also looking at the policy implications. And I'm very happy to say that also in collaboration with TNC, we come out with a NDC blue carbon paper on Saturday, so stay tuned for that. And there are a couple of other projects happening at the moment. But as I said, the mitigation side is just one part of the story. Coastal ecosystems also play a huge role for adaptation and reducing coastal erosion. They play, we heard this from Carol, a role in coastal defenses. They reduce coastal flooding or maintain also fisheries nursery ground, they play a role for tourism, and so forth. And then we have the additional benefits of biodiversity, of the water quality they bring, etc. So it has a huge implication for local livelihood, and not only the coastal communities, but this has big commercial interests. So not only for just the beauty and the role of those ecosystems themselves, we really have to go protect and conserve the systems. And again, through the UNFCCC, but also through many national policies and strategies, we have means to implement marine protected areas, or to use coastal zone management, or broadly speaking, marine spatial planning to think about this. And I think what we heard from the speakers before is really that now we know about the impacts, we know about the warming, we know about the ocean acidification, we know about the deoxygenation, and we need to take those elements into account as we go on and plan the way we interact, or plan human interaction with the marine environment, and whether that's also using fisheries legislation and so forth. Again, from IUCN side, we are engaged in a variety of ecosystem-based adaptation projects, which I'm not going to go into all the details here, but throughout the world, basically. And if you have some specific interests or questions about it, I'd be more than happy to elaborate on those as well. And obviously, I think I've been way below my time. You probably noticed that I focused on the coastal system, basically, here now on the ecosystem-based mitigation and adaptation. And I think a question I want to put out in the room is that we know other systems in the ocean play a huge role in the carbon cycle, but we haven't really tackled the policy discussion on the policy side of this. How do we conserve or even use or develop incentive mechanisms through the UNFCCC for the open ocean discussions? Because often they are in areas beyond national jurisdiction, but I think I want to open that up to the room here really to think about is how can we, as Carol put it in the beginning, oceans are playing gratefully a more and more prominent role here, but how can we really use the UNFCCC appropriately for this system, or what is it that we need to do in collaboration with other multilateral environmental agreements? On that question, I would like to end up and just refer to some of the work where you can read much more on nature-based solution in general in the work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. I would like also to tell you that recently IUCN came up with a very thorough and detailed analysis of the state of environment in the ocean. Really fundamental publication. So, we discussed nearly everything now, but we all understand that we need to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. And that is the only way for us to come to the world which is only warmer by 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees. So in addition to natural processes, in addition to organization, it will be really important. If, for example, we have efficient maritime special planning, coastal zone management, marine protected areas. If we have good legislation that really reduces the impact on the ocean, then the natural abilities of the ocean to absorb carbon and help life support will continue. But at the same time, some artificial and science-based solutions may be still required. So Phil Williamson, who is in front of you, is actually an expert and he's marine biogeochemist, focusing recently and for already many years on the issues of climate engineering and how we can really deal with carbon in the ocean. This is his specialty and he's very well known for that. So Phil, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning, and it's great to be here. I'd like to take you back to a year ago at Paris. Some of you were there then, and the big headline, what it says at the top was what was decided a year ago. That was a little bit missed out. What was decided a year ago? The two big headline messages were about temperature, holding the increase to well below 2 degrees centigrade and preferably to 1.5. But there was a third message, turn over the page, and to me, that was the most important, is achieving the balance of emissions. and achieve the balance between anthropogenic emissions, sources and removals, and that means net zero emissions. And that is crucial. What goes up must come down, in that we have to balance. It isn't a matter of just reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it's actually having net zero emissions. So if we have a look to see how much progress has been made in the last year, there's been various sort of nationally determined contributions, but unfortunately they're not yet, we haven't turned the corner, that the projections for the increase of greenhouse gas emissions are still on the increase, they're not turning around yet, and in order to get down, it isn't just a matter of levelling down, it's going down below. If we overshoot, we've got to take out some greenhouse gases from the system, principally carbon dioxide. So this has been a little bit slow in being acknowledged exactly what net zero emissions mean, but there was a very important statement by the UK Committee on Climate Change just a month ago. It's now singing in, if you read that carefully, even with full deployment of known low carbon measures, some emissions will remain. So it's still, it isn't just a matter of taking it down, 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 until net zero. So if we have a look at what's going up, there isn't a figure of number of gigatons of carbon. It doesn't really matter what it is. If we're producing emissions, it's going into the atmosphere. Some will be absorbed by natural systems on land and in the ocean. And if we have carbon capture and storage, we can reduce the emissions at source and take it down underground. But still, there will still be, as long as there are emissions, greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere will continue to rise and we won't achieve stabilization. So therefore, the conclusion of that is that one has to take out some part of what we're adding in. And that can be done in three main different ways: direct air capture, land-based biological systems, or ocean systems. And very briefly, just going through the feasibility and possible effectiveness of the ocean systems for taking out this carbon dioxide. And that there's various methods have been proposed, can't go into them in great detail, but just a little bit of mention of ocean fertilization. It has been investigated within the research groups have looked at this over the last 20 years. The conclusion is, I'll reach the conclusion, that actually is not going to be very effective, but nevertheless, 20 years ago when the research started, it thought that very small amounts of adding iron to the ocean could take down a lot of carbon dioxide. What we didn't realise, or only put the information together, this doesn't happen all over the world. The adding of the iron, the effectiveness is mostly in the Southern Ocean, where there's other nutrients there that can, adding the iron as an extra nutrient, and there's also the nitrate and the phosphate there, so it's most effective in the Southern Ocean. But that area is a particularly politically difficult one, and it's going to be very difficult to have large-scale ocean fertilization in the Southern Ocean for various reasons that you can glance down on the left-hand side. And not least at all, the political and public acceptability of that is very low. So that is probably unlikely. If we have a look at some other methods, one is adding various minerals. One of these is olivine, that actually, if you grind it up and add it to the ocean, it can take up a certain amount of carbon dioxide. It's been proposed, but if you add this onto beaches and around the world, then it might soak up a little bit of the carbon dioxide. There are problems with this as well. The very large quantities will be involved, it's going to be expensive, and there's all sorts of biological impacts that are really rather unlikely. So my messages don't go there either. Now, are there other approaches? It doesn't have to be the carbon dioxide removal. It could be increasing the albedo of the atmosphere, all of the sea surface, all of the land, and that if one makes that ship that dumped the olivine out sailing away, is it possible to add some not necessarily detergent, but something in the ship to create lots of extra foam, and if you cover the ocean with foam, that would make it whiter, and that would cool the planet, in theory. It's not a very good idea to have lots of extra foam on the ocean, in that it will blow and it'll end up land. It'll do all sorts of very unpleasant things to life in the ocean, so don't go there either. One other suggestion is that would it be possible to increase the cloudiness over the ocean? Is it possible to artificially create clouds? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but there's various sort of science fiction ways of doing that. The problem then is that one has regional climate disruption, and once one starts on this process, if you start changing the heat balance in one part of the ocean, it will have effects. If there is some devastating storm or something, that the legal responsibility will be whoever did this to the ocean, or to the clouds over the ocean will have the legal responsibility. So there's very big insurance issues involved there. So overall, my conclusion reiterates what has already been said. Reduce emissions, reduce emissions, reduce emissions. Absolutely. One can use marine renewable energy. One can safeguard natural coastal sinks, as advocated by Dorothy. Fully agree with that. And if there is any residual carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases, there are chemical means of there. The problem is they're expensive, but nevertheless the costs got to come down, and we've got to try and remove the extra carbon dioxide from the atmosphere in that way. That's using direct air capture. Thank you very much. There's a report on this published by the Convention on Biological Diversity. I haven't got copies with me, but it is online. You can look at all the different techniques and check it out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. So now I would like to invite our panelists to the podium, and we will have a 20-minute or 25-minute questions and answers session. You know, I think it was I liked very much the presentations, because we have now kind of an end-to-end system. We looked at what was happening. We saw some solutions, but at the same time we came back to the real situation. There is no one who is going to help us. There will be no science fiction-based solutions. We have to organize ourselves in terms of using the ocean effectively and efficiently and saving the ocean. That is basically the message that we got from this panel. This will also require, of course, a lot of changes on land and a lot of changes on politics and commitments of nations that understand the reality about the climate change and the associated change in the ocean. So the panel is ready now to take questions, and I invite those questions. I don't know, I've been sitting quite a bit, so you know. So, question please. Yes, first question.
Thank you so much for the.
And you know, maybe you should give you the mic. So, do we have a mic? Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Thanks to all the panelists for great presentations and very updated information. I have some questions for some of you. For Mr. Han, what's the mean rise in sea surface temperature? The mean rise for the past, because the prediction, but we want to know how was it rising during the past years, post-industrial time frame. For Mr. Elf, what's the impact of climate change on current systems? If you have any idea, you talked about oxidation on oxygen levels, on acidity. I wanted to know if you have any idea on how climate change is impacting the current system movement. Also, for Libby, I just wanted to know if you have studied any relationship between acidification, rise level, and biodiversity concentration.